Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 775, written by Straight Professor 68, Quantum Immortality from the Other Side. I've always been really interested in the how, what, why of it all, and recently applied that interest to reading and watching documentaries about different quantum theories. That's when I stumbled across mentions of astral projection and quantum immortality. I remembered my mom describing experiences to me when I was young from her own childhood that sounded just like what I'd read astral projection was like. The next time we talked on the phone, I brought it up and asked her to describe it to me. She can't do it anymore, and can't remember exactly when it stopped. I took notes, but that's another post. For craps and giggles, I decided to describe quantum immortality to her and asked her if she remembered any time in her life that she should have died but didn't. The example I gave her was one of an impending head-on collision. You close your eyes and brace for impact. It's unavoidable, but nothing happens and you open your eyes and the truck is behind you driving in the opposite direction as though it had driven right through you. No one else on the road noticed a thing. This is where it gets strange. My mom is immediately reminded of almost that exact thing that apparently happened to her one winter night in 2009 to 2010, and apparently to me as well, which is insane because I really don't quite remember it. What I do remember is that my parents had just split up. I was 19 or 20 and a sophomore in college. I was living with my mom in a townhouse and commuting to school because I had a horrible roommate experience on campus. We were really close at the time, going through a lot together. That night, I remember that we went to see Alice in Wonderland in 3D. We got pretty buzzed in the parking lot first, not after, don't worry, and loaded up on snacks. I remember it was freezing and snowy, and it was a late showing, so it was pitch black outside. This was in upstate New York. I remember that my mom drove the Prius that she still has to this day. What I don't remember is what she described to me happened on the way home, or if I do, it's very vague and might just be because I imagined what she told me. She said we were on a main road between towns headed home, crossing over the Erie Canal on a bridge that slightly curves and intersects almost immediately at the end with another main road on each side. She said there was a car coming from the opposite direction, and the road, especially the bridge, was extremely icy. The other car started to slide, and I guess it was coming at us. My mom said she couldn't get out of the way to the left or right because even if it weren't too slippery, we were on a bridge, so there wasn't really anywhere to go. She also couldn't slam on the brakes because then we'd just be sliding too and would just make it worse. She said she did the mom seatbelt, which why, with one arm, and closed her eyes and braces for impact. And she actually doesn't remember much after that other than being home. Doesn't specifically remember being like, wait, what? I was floored when she told me this because I hadn't remembered it at all. I just thought, and then forgot for a few weeks. Yesterday, we were talking on the phone again, my mom and I, and it dawned on me that we barely speak anymore. She said something wildly out of character that left me speechless. Not the first time she's done so in recent years. She also mentioned that I had changed and that we didn't agree on anything anymore and that I was hard to talk to. I realized that I also didn't recognize this woman in a lot of ways. The mom I remember as a kid, despite all her flaws, was pretty liberal-minded and taught me about civil rights, how deep down we're really all the same. She pondered the stars, and while I was raised Catholic, thanks to grandparents on dad's side, she always taught me to be open-minded too, but also wary of all religions. She talked about reincarnation and the soul, and yeah, though not on purpose, she used to astral project as a child. She was one of my best friends and a great comfort. I don't know if we've lived too far apart for too long or she's just getting old and she's so engrossed in her local news media, I don't watch television news at all, that is driving her to change. But my mom is now super conservative and is more rude to random people than I ever remember. Not that one implies the other. She says what she thinks and doesn't care who it insults. The odd part is, she's the happiest she's ever been. My stepdad is great. They have a nice house. They're both still working, but they have great jobs. They're financially secure. They have hobbies. Also, she randomly out of nowhere in her 50s developed a nut allergy, which I know can happen, but I figured it could be relevant. Case notes for file 775, Quantum Immortality, from the other side. So one thing to remember about quantum immortality, or at least ponder on, because of course this is all speculation, wildly interesting speculation, but still, is that if one person dies, and then another person next to them dies too, say in a car crash you're with your mother, and you both die at the same time, well, if quantum immortality is guaranteed, does this mean that you'll both be transposed your sentience to the same adjacent universe? I mean, I guess it would depend, right? It would depend on the copies of you in that adjacent universe and how closely related they are, but also on if you're even alive in that universe still. There'd be some rewinding of time shenanigans going on, and we have seen that before in events of quantum immortality. I guess it depends on how important is it to the coding of the universe that people who are closely related, or friends, be transposed to the same universe. Maybe it is important. Maybe that is a factor. But also, maybe that doesn't happen at all. Maybe it's just random. Maybe the universe you go to, maybe there's a general sphere of location, hard to describe, like the medium between universes. I have no idea what that is. It's not space, as we would know it. There probably is still a distance to travel, and the further it is, the less sense there is in you going there, because I imagine it still requires energy, maybe processing power, the further away it is. Can almost think of it like transmitting data over a Ethernet cord. At a certain distance, it starts losing signal strength, and you just need a better transmitting cable, like a fiber optic or cable. I get the impression, though, that the transfer is limited in distance, or at least there's a strong preference for it being closer. And in that sense, you may be the original you from this universe. You don't remember this close encounter with the other car because it never happened to you. You've always been in this universe. It's your mom that was transposed into this universe, and that would also explain how seemingly she changed. She was liberal, then she was conservative, and maybe more rude all of a sudden. That could explain some of it. There was a blending of sentience, and your mother changed, because it's not just your mother. Or it is your mother plus. Case file number 776, written by Nameless Drifter 1. 2 moms for the price of 1. This is my first time writing this story out, let alone telling anyone else, except my mom, about it. So it's the year 2015, and after the graduation ceremony and everybody's given their speeches and whatnot, we're all out in the parking lot heading home. I was talking with some of my friends out there before heading to the car. As I started leaving, I noticed this woman on her way to pass my left. I look at her and she looks a lot like my mother, with the exception of looking maybe between 15 to 35 years older and with slightly different, almost curled hair. Her hair color was like a very faded blonde, brownish in between. Her facial features were extremely similar to my mother's. She was maybe an inch or a couple shorter as well. I stared at her for a good couple seconds before her gaze met mine, and I looked away. Then, as she was behind me, I looked one more time. After that, I didn't see my mother's car anywhere, so I sat down and waited in the parking lot. There were these kids that I didn't recognize. It looked like they had been there from another school, but I don't know why they were there. There was this blonde kid who started eyeballing me really intensely, like he recognized me from somewhere, but he was trying to figure out who I was. I was a little uncomfortable and was pretending to look like I didn't notice him, but he stared at me for a good while, so eventually I just looked at him and stared back. That's when he looked away. I'm not sure what was up with that dude. Not sure if this had any connection to seeing that woman, but it happened in the same hour. I eventually found my mom's car, and she was talking with one of my friend's moms. I didn't mention it to her, she seemed a bit puzzled, but that's it. I can't say for sure if this was actually an older, future version of my mother. It could have just been some older woman who looked a lot like her. But my mom has pretty distinct features. Has anyone else had an encounter or experienced phenomena like this? Case notes for file 776. 2 moms for the price of 1. So yeah, there are a lot of people on this planet, almost 8 billion, or actually, did we cross the threshold into 8 billion? Somewhere around there. That's an unfathomable amount of people. Is it conceivable that there's someone out there that looks just like your mom, just a bit older? Yeah, of course. Now, that they're in the same vicinity as you is more rare, but it's not inconceivable. If it is just down the road of glitches, then I don't think it's a doppelganger. The impression of that is not at all related to doppelgangers. You also mentioned that she's a bit shorter, so that can just be explained by the fact that as we age, we slightly shorten, our spine compresses more, we often also don't maintain proper back posture when we're sitting. I wonder who the boy is, if he's at all relevant to this glitch. Maybe your mom had another child, and he has this instinct that you're his sibling. Maybe. Kinda neat.